So I'm Roger Mugford. I'm a qualified psychologist, clinical psychologist, but with an interest in the human-animal relationship. And you can see that I'm quite interested in the relationship of my dogs with me. I believe that the special bond that people have with dogs and dogs have with people needs to be fostered. About 10% of dog owners have real problems with their dogs. So I've made looking after problem dogs my profession, my interest. Dogs resort to violence as a last resort. They're pressurized into it, just as humans, strangers, are bitten by dogs in defense of territory. And these behaviors don't just happen, they develop slowly. A trip to the vets or to the groomer that may be stressful for some dogs, pop a muzzle on them until you're quite sure that with reward-based training, he is happy in that situation. It's the obligation of every dog owner to keep the rest of the population safe. So the come response is really your most important life-saving command or control point over a dog. And the time to begin that is when they're a puppy. So a puppy will naturally follow its mother or a littermate because that's what they do. We're talking about a puppy younger than 12 weeks. And with a treat or even without a treat, with a squeaky, fluffy toy, just walk away from him and he will follow and say, come, 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 come. If you have an adult dog that was never taught that as a puppy, it's more complicated. Maybe you have a long line, a 5 or 10 meter long line, and so you're holding the end of that. And again, you back away with treats in your hand and probably with your arms outstretched to indicate come. And then the dog has to come, because you pull in the line at worst, and of course you give him a treat at the end of it. So all dog training becomes so much simpler if you have the allure and the payoff of a nice treat. Dave! Okay, and good boy, good boy. If a dog is really afraid of water, then go at it gently. Like with a wet sponge and make it fun, and of course resort to treats and spend a little time reducing that fear. And of course don't go out in midwinter with a hosepipe and hose them down, even if they come back filthy after a walk. It's the temperament and physique of dogs is a more important indicator of the requirement for exercise than the breed. So, for instance, a Jack Russell is pretty tireless and needs a lot of exercise. A Lhasa Apso, perhaps not so much. So it's not so much breed specific, it is very breed specific, but it's not size specific. The calorific or energy requirements of dogs has been intensively studied, of course, by the pet food companies. And we know that there are large individual differences, but you can calculate the theoretical requirements of a dog. And I have to say, most of the feeding instructions on most of the dog foods commercially available are excessive. In other words, they overstate the dog's requirement for food. Obesity, fatness, is public enemy number one for healthy dogs. Various estimates are that maybe half of all pet dogs in Western Europe and the UK and US are overweight. Feed less is good, feed healthier is good, feed less carbohydrate and less fat, more protein based, and of course there are really good now alternative sources of nutrition. Vegan is a potentially appropriate diet for dogs. There's a dog in my professional knowledge called George. He is obsessed with televisions, and it can be online on a laptop or a full screen, and he watches soaps, he watches Formula One or dog animal programs with Attenborough, but he's pretty special. Most dogs simply do not transfer the two-dimensional, and even with really complicated HD type TV technology, they, I'm sure, do not relate to images on the flat screen. Dogs are incredibly good at reading emotions in humans, and they can detect our emotional state by looking at our facial expression, our eyes, our lips, our voice, our movements, and of course probably our chemistry. And there's some indication that induced fear in humans does indeed communicate to dogs and that they respond accordingly. We can recognize those same emotions in dogs. If dogs were not good at communicating their emotional state, we wouldn't have invited them into our home and into our bed and into our cars and be as intimate as we are with them. So they're good judges of human character, and they train humans to become a good judge of dog personality, dog character, dog emotion. It's really easy to understand them. It's more complicated to understand a reptile or a pig, which could have been domesticated, and we could have shared our lives with pigs just as well as dogs, or of course with cats. Cats do communicate visually, but not so clearly and obviously as do dogs. Consistency is really important to get the trust of a dog, and it's really pretty much the same rules as with trust with your partner or with your best friend. Never let them down. Obviously spoiling with treats, with walks. They depend upon us for everything, and all of the things that they enjoy, their best toys and playing games with them. Dogs love to play games. I think people who get the most from their dogs are those who have them participate in everything that they do. So they don't leave them at home for 8 hours at a stretch, nor even take them to dog daycare. They try to let the dog join in with them, go to work with them, go on vacations with them. Not having dogs as a status symbol, not something to look at, but it's something to do things with. Dogs are active animals, and the biggest enemy for a dog is to be ignored or to be left alone.